Can I, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Haribol.
ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरोन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
Haribol. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु।
Okay, so today we continue from the chapter Prayers by the Vedas personified. Yeah, Prayers by the personified Vedas. We got left in the middle of this chapter, I think. So let's continue from this part. Those who are very materialistic and cannot understand the situation of the spiritual world cannot understand the abode of Krishna. For such persons, great sages have recommended the yogic process whereby one gradually rises from meditation on the abdomen, which is called Muladhara or Manipuraka meditation. Muladhara and Manipuraka are technical terms which refer to the intestines within the abdomen. Grossly materialistic persons think that economic development is of foremost importance because they are under the impression that a living entity exists only by eating. Such grossly materialistic persons forget that although we may eat as much as we like, if the food is not digested, it produces the troubles of indigestion and acidity. Therefore, in itself, eating is not the cause of vital energy of life. For digestion of eatables, we have to take shelter of another superior energy, which is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as Vaishvanara. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that he helps the digestion in the form of Vaishvanara. The Supreme Person of Godhead is all pervasive, therefore, his presence as Vaishvanara is not extraordinary. Krishna is actually present everywhere. The Vaishnava therefore marks his body with temples of Vishnu. He first marks a tilak temple on the abdomen, then on the chest, then between the collarbones, then on the forehead, and gradually he marks the top of the head, the Brahmarandra. The 13 temples of Tilak marked on the body of a Vaishnav are known as follows. On the forehead is the temple of Lord Keshava, on the belly is the Lord temple of Lord Narayana, on the chest is the temple of Lord Madhava, and on the throat between the two collarbones is the temple of Lord Govinda. On the right side of the waist is the temple of Lord Vishnu. On the right arm is the temple of Lord Madhusudana, and on the right side of the collarbone is the temple of Lord Trivikrama. Similarly, on the left side of the waist is the temple of Lord Vamana Deva. On the left arm is the temple of Sridhar, and on the left side of the collarbone is the temple of Rishikesha. On the upper back, the temple is called Padmanabha. and on the lower back the temple is called Damodara. On the top of the head, the temple is called Vasudeva. This is the process of meditation on the Lord's situation in the different parts of the body. But for those who are not Vaishnavas, great sages recommend meditation on the bodily concept of life, meditation on the intestines, on the heart, on the throat, on the eyebrows, on the forehead, and then on the top of the head. Some of the sages in the disciplic succession, from the great saint Aruna, meditate on the heart because the supersoul is also staying within the heart along with the living entity. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, wherein the Lord states, I am situated in everyone's heart. For the Vaishnava, the protection of the body for the service of the Lord is a part of devotional service. But those who are gross materialists accept the body as the self. They worship the body by the yogic process of meditation on the different bodily parts such as Manipuraka, Dahara, and Hridaya, gradually rising to the Brahmarandra on the top of the head. The first class yogi who has attained perfection in the practice of the yoga system ultimately passes through the Brahmarandra to any of the planets in either the material or spiritual worlds. How a yogi can transfer himself to another planet is very vividly described in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, Haribol, who wants to continue from this part?
Varun Prabhu can go first and then I can go next.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. In this regard, Sukadev Goswami has recommended that the beginners worship the Virat Purusha, the gigantic universal form of the Lord. One who cannot believe that the Lord can be worshipped with equal success in the deity or archa form, or who cannot concentrate on this form, is advised to worship the universal form of the Lord. The lower part of the universe is considered the feet and legs of the Lord's universal form. The middle part of the universe is considered the navel or abdomen of the Lord. The upper planetary systems, such as Janaloka and Maharloka, are the heart of the Lord, and the topmost planetary system, Brahmaloka, is considered the top of the Lord's head. There are different processes recommended by great sages according to the position of the worshipper, but the ultimate aim of all meditational and yogic processes is to go back home, back to Godhead. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, anyone who reaches the highest planet, the abode of Krishna, or even the Vaikuntha planets, never has to come down again to this miserable material condition of life. The Vedic recommendation, therefore, is that one make the lotus feet of Vishnu the target of all one's efforts. Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam, Vishnu Loka or the Vishnu planets are situated above all the material planets. These Vaikuntha planets are known as Sanatana Dham and they are eternal. They are never annihilated, not even by the annihilation of this material world. The conclusion is that if a human being does not fulfill the mission of his life by worshipping the Supreme Lord and does not go back to Godhead, then it is to be understood that he has been frustrated in fulfilling the main purposes of human life. Purpose of human life. The next prayer of the personified Vedas to the Lord concerns his entering into different species of life. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, that in every species and form of life, the spiritual part and parcel of the Supreme Lord is present. The Lord himself claims in the Gita that he is the seed-giving father of all forms and species, and therefore they must all be considered sons of the Lord. The entrance of the Supreme Lord into everyone's heart as Paramatma sometimes bewilders the impersonalists who think in terms of the equality of the living entities with the Supreme Lord. They think that because the Supreme Lord enters into different bodies along with the individual soul, there is no distinction between the Lord and the individual entities. The challenge is, why should individual souls worship the Paramatma or Super Soul? According to them, both the Super Soul and the individual soul are on the same level. They are one without any difference between them. There is a difference, however, between the Super Soul and in the individual soul. And this is explained in Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, wherein the Lord says that although he is situated with the living entity in the same body, he is superior. He is dictating to or giving intelligence to the individual soul from within. It is clearly stated in the Gita that the Lord gives intelligence to the individual soul, and that both memory and forgetfulness are due to the influence of the supersoul. No one can act independently of the sanction of supersoul. Therefore, the individual soul acts according to his past karma reminded by the Lord. The nature of the individual soul is forgetfulness, but the presence of the Lord within the heart reminds him of what he wanted to do in his past life. The intelligence of the individual soul is exhibited like fire in wood. Although fire is always fire, it is exhibited in a size proportionate to the size of the wood. Similarly, although the individual soul is qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord, he exhibits himself according to the limitations of his present body. Haribol. Should I finish this, Prabhu?
Luvesh Prabhu, are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll be doing now. The Supreme Lord, uh, the Supreme Lord or the Super Soul is said to be Ekarasa. Eka means one and Rasa means mellow. So the transcendental position of the Supreme Lord is that of eternity, bliss, and full knowledge. His position of Eka Rasa does not change in the slightest when he becomes a witness and advisor to the individual soul in each individual body. The individual soul, beginning from Lord Brahma down to the ant, exhibits his spiritual potency according to his present body. The demigods are in the same category with the individual souls in the bodies of the human beings or in the bodies of lower animals. Intelligent persons, therefore, do not worship different demigods who are simply infinitesimal representatives of Krishna manifesting in conditioned bodies. The individual soul can exhibit his power and potencies only in proportion to the shape and constitution of the body. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, can exhibit his full potencies in any shape or form without any change. The Mayavadi philosopher's thesis that God and the individual soul are one and the same cannot be accepted because the individual soul has to develop his power and potencies according to the development of different types of bodies. The individual soul in the body of a baby cannot show the full power and potency of a grown man. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, even when lying on the lap of his mother as a baby, could exhibit his full potency and power by killing Putana and other demons who tried to attack him. Therefore, the spiritual potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is said to be Ekarasa, or without change. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the only worshipable object, and this is perfectly known to persons who are uncontaminated by the force of material nature. In other words, only the liberated souls can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Less intelligent Mayavadis take to the worship of demigods, thinking that the demigods and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are on the same level. The personified Vedas continue to offer their obeisances. Dear Lord, they prayed, after many, many births, those who have actually become wise take to the worship of your lotus feet in complete knowledge. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, wherein the Lord says that after many, many births, a great soul or Mahatma surrenders unto the Lord, knowing well that Vasudev, Krishna, is the cause of all causes. The Vedas continued, as has already been explained, since our mind and intelligence and senses have been given to us by God, when these instruments are actually purified, there is no alternative than to engage them all in the devotional service of the Lord. A living entity's entrapment in different species of life is due to the misapplication of his mind, intelligence, and senses in material activities. Various kinds of bodies are awarded as the result of a living entity's actions, and they are created by the material nature according to the living entity's desire. Because a living entity desires and deserves a particular kind of body, it is given to him by the material nature under the order of the Supreme Lord. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, it is explained that under the control of superior authority, a living entity is put within the semina of a male and injected into the womb of a particular female in order to develop a particular type of body. A living entity utilizes his senses, intelligence, mind, etc., in a specific way of his own choosing, and thus develops a particular type of body within which he becomes engaged. In this way, the living entity becomes situated in different species of life, either in a demigod, human, or animal body, according to different situations and circumstances. It is explained in the Vedic literatures that the living entities entrapped in different species of life are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. The Mayavadi philosophers may mistake the living entity for the Paramatma, who is actually sitting within the living entity as a friend. So, because the Paramatma, the localized aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual living entity are both within the body, a misunderstanding sometimes takes place that there is no difference between the two. But there is a definite difference between the individual soul and the super soul, and it is explained in the Varaha Purana as follows. The Supreme Lord has two kinds of parts and parcels. The living entity is called Vibhinansh, and the Paramatma or the plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord is called Svansha. The Svansha plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is as powerful as the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. There is not even the slightest difference between the potency of the Supreme Person and that of his plenary expansion as Paramatma. But the Vibhinansha parts and parcels possess only a minute portion of the potencies of the Lord. The Narayana Pancharatra states that the living entities who are the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord are undoubtedly of the same quality of spiritual existence as the Lord himself, but they are prone to be tinged with the material qualities. Because he is prone to be subjected to the influence of material qualities, the minute living entity is called Jiva. Sometimes the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also known as Shiv, the all auspicious. So the difference between Shiv and Jeev is that the all auspicious personality of Godhead is never affected by the material qualities, whereas the minute portions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are prone to be affected by the qualities of material nature. The supersoul within the body of a particular living entity, although a plenary portion of the Lord, is worshipable by the individual living entity. Great sages have therefore concluded that the process of meditation is designed so that the individual living entity may concentrate his attention on the lotus feet of the super soul form Vishnu. That is the real form of samadhi. The living entity cannot become liberated from material entanglement by his own effort. He must therefore take to the devotional service of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord or the super soul within himself. Sridhara Swami, the great commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, has composed a nice verse in this regard, the purport of which is as follows. My dear Lord, I am eternally your part and parcel, but I have been entrapped by the material potencies which are also an emanation from you. As the cause of all causes, you have entered my body as a super soul, and I have the prerogative to enjoy the supreme blissful life of knowledge along with you. Therefore, my dear Lord, please order me to render you loving service so that I can again be brought to my original position of transcendental bliss. Great personalities understand that a living entity entangled in this Great personalities understand that a living entity entangled in this material world cannot become freed by his own efforts. With firm faith and devotion, such great personalities engage themselves in rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. That is the verdict of the personified Vedas. The personified Vedas continued, Dear Lord, it is very difficult to achieve perfect knowledge of the absolute truth. Your Lordship is so kind to the fallen souls that you appear in different incarnations and execute different activities. You appear even as a historical personality of this material world, and your pastimes are very nicely described in the Vedic literatures. Such pastimes are as attractive as the ocean of transcendental bliss. People in general have a natural inclination to read narrations in which ordinary jivas are glorified, but when they become attracted by the Vedic literatures which delineate your eternal pastimes, they actually dip into the ocean of transcendental bliss. As a fatigued man feels refreshed by dipping into a reservoir of water, so the conditioned soul who is very much disgusted with material activities becomes refreshed and forgets all the fatigue of material activities simply by dipping into the transcendental ocean of your pastimes. And eventually he merges in the ocean of transcendental bliss. The most intelligent devotees, therefore, do not take any means of self realization except devotional service and constant engagement in the 9 different processes of devotional life, especially hearing and chanting. When hearing and chanting about your transcendental pastimes, your devotees do not care even for the transcendental bliss derived from liberation or from merging into the existence of the Supreme. Such devotees are not interested even in so called liberation. And certainly they have no interest in material activities for elevation to the heavenly planets for sense gratification. Pure devotees seek only the association of Paramhansas or great liberated devotees so that they can continually hear and chant about your glories. For this purpose, the pure devotees are prepared to sacrifice all comforts of life, even giving up the material comforts of family life and so called society, friendship, and love. Those who have tasted the nectar of devotion by relishing the transcendental vibration of chanting your glories, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, do not care for any other spiritual bliss or for material comforts, which appear to the pure devotee to be less important than the straw in the street. Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Who would like to continue?
Oh, Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhu. Then
Jai Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Zero Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Shri Prabhupada.
Haribo.
Who would like to continue? Jai Prabhu, would you like to continue?
Not available, Prabhu, but I'm hearing to it.
Okay, Prabhu. Zero Prabhu, what about you? Can you read?
Where is our Lebhang Prabhu? He's missing.
Oh,
Or
I
maybe
can continue if you want.
also Barun Prabhu is there.
Varun Prabhu, you want to continue?
Sure, Prabhu.
Okay.
The personified Vedas continued. Dear Lord, when a person is able to purify his mind, senses, and intelligence by engaging himself in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, his mind becomes his friend. Otherwise, his mind is always his enemy. When the mind is engaged in devotional service of the Lord, it becomes the intimate friend of the living entity, because the mind can then think of the Supreme Lord always. Your lordship is eternally dear to the living entity. So, when the mind is engaged in thought of you, one immediately feels the great satisfaction for which he has been hankering life after life. When one mind is thus fixed on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one does not take to any kind of inferior worship or inferior process of self realization. By attempting to worship a demigod or by taking to any other process of self realization, the living entity becomes a victim of the cycle of birth and death. And no one can estimate how much the living entity becomes degraded by entering the abominable species of life, such as the cats and dogs. Sri Narottam Das Thakur has sung that persons who do not take to devotional service of the Lord, but are attracted to the process of philosophical speculation and fruitive activities, drink the poisonous results of such actions. Such persons are forced to take birth in different species of life and are forced to adopt obnoxious practices like meat eating and intoxication. Materialistic persons generally worship the transient material body and forget the welfare of the spirit soul within the body. Some take shelter of material science to improve bodily comforts, and some take to the worship of demigods in order to be promoted to the heavenly planets. Their goal in life is to make the material body comfortable while forgetting the interest of the spirit soul. Such persons are described in the Vedic literature as suicidal because attachment for the material body and its comforts forces the living entity to wander through the process of birth and death perpetually and suffer the material pangs as a matter of course. The human form of life is a chance for one to understand his position, and the most intelligent person takes to devotional service just to engage his mind, senses, and body in the service of the Lord without deviation. The personified Vedas continued. Dear Lord, there are many mystic yogis who are very learned and deliberate in achieving the highest perfection of life. They engage themselves in the yogic process of controlling the life air within the body, concentrating the mind upon the form of Vishnu, and controlling the senses very rigidly. They practice the yoga system. But even after much laborious austerity, penance, and regulation, they achieve the same destination as persons who are inimical toward you. In other words, both the yogis and great wise philosophical speculators ultimately attain the impersonal Brahman effulgence, which is also automatically attained by the demons who are regular enemies of the Lord. Demons like Kamsa, Shishupal, and Dantavakra also attain the Brahman effulgence because they constantly meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Women such as the gopis were attached to Krishna and captivated by his beauty, and their mental concentration on Krishna was provoked by lust. They wanted to be embraced by the arms of Krishna, which resemble the beautiful round shape of a snake. Similarly, there are the Vedic hymns, and we also simply concentrate our minds on the lotus feet of your Lordship. Women like the gopis concentrate upon you dictated by lust, and we concentrate upon your lotus feet to go back home, back to Godhead. Your enemies also concentrate upon you, thinking always how to kill you, and the yogis undertake great penances and austerities just to attain your impersonal effulgence. All these different persons, although concentrating their minds in different ways, achieve spiritual perfection according to their different perspectives, because you are equal to all your devotees. Sridhar Swami has composed a nice verse in this regard. My dear Lord, to be engaged always in thinking of your lotus feet is very difficult. It is possible by great devotees who have already achieved love for you and who are engaged in transcendental loving service. My dear Lord, I wish that my mind also may be engaged somehow or other on your lotus feet, at least for some time. The attainment of spiritual perfection by different spiritualists is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, wherein the Lord says that he grants the perfection the devotee desires in proportion to the devotee's surrender unto him. The impersonalists, yogis, and the enemies of the Lord enter into the Lord's transcendental effulgence. But the personalists who are following in the footsteps of the inhabitants of Vrindavan or strictly following the path of devotional service are elevated to the personal abode of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan, or to the Vaikuntha planets. Both the impersonalists and the personalists enter into the spiritual realm or the spiritual sky, but the impersonalists are given their place in the impersonal Brahman effulgence, whereas the personalists are given a position in the Vaikuntha planets or in the Vrindavana planet according to their desire to serve the Lord in different mellows. Should I continue, Prabhu?
If you want, Prabhu.
Or
Yes.
else Swami Prabhu can continue.
Sami Prabhu, you can continue if you want.
Yes, Prabhu, I read one page, then we can chant them Shiksastakam prayers.
Okay, Prabhu.
As for the material creation, Brahma is the first created person. Before Brahma, there was no living creature within this material world. It was void and dark until Brahma was born on the lotus flower sprouted from the abdomen of Garbhodakasai Vishnu. Garbhodakasai Vishnu is an expansion of Karanodakasai Vishnu. Karanodakasai Vishnu is an expansion of Sankarshana, and Sankarshana is an expansion of Balaram. Balaram
Hare
is...
Krishna Prabhu,
Yes,
I think
Prabhu.
you skipped something.
Which part?
Uh, a bit, scroll up a bit
Oh,
more.
this part?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Prabhu. I was thinking if I missed something. The personified Vedas stated that persons who are born after the creation of this material world cannot understand the existence of the Supreme Person of Godhead by manipulating their material knowledge. Just as a person born in a particular family cannot understand the position of his great-grandfather who lived before the birth of the recent generation, we are unable to understand the Supreme Person of Godhead, Narayana or Krishna, who exists eternally in the spiritual world. In the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that the Supreme Person who lives eternally in the spiritual kingdom of God, Sanatana Dhamma, can be approached only by devotional service. After the creation of Sankarshana is an expansion of Balaram. Balaram is an immediate expansion of Lord Krishna. After the creation of Brahma, the two kinds of demigods were born. Demigods like the four brothers, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sananda, and Sanat Kumara, who are representatives of renunciation of the world, and demigods like Marichi and their descendants, who are meant to enjoy the material world. From these two kinds of demigods were gradually manifested all other living entities, including the human beings. Thus, any living creature within this material world, including Brahma, all the demigods, and all the Rakshasas, are to be considered modern. This means that they were all recently born. Therefore, just as a person recently born in a family cannot understand the situation of his distant forefather, so anyone within this material world cannot understand the position of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world, because the material world has only recently been created. Although they have long duration of existence, all the All the manifestations of the material world, namely the time elements and the living entities, the Vedas, the gross and subtle elements, are all created at some point. Anything manufactured within this created situation or accepted as a means to understanding the original source of creation is to be considered modern. Nice example. Okay, Haribol. Now we need to go to six Astakam prayers.
Rebold.
Haribol. चेतो दर्पणमार्जनं पवमहदावाग्निर्वापनं श्रेयः कैरवचन्द्रिकावितरणम् इत्यावादुजीवनम् आनन्दं बुद्धिवर्धनं प्रतिपदं पूर्णामृतस्वादनं सर्वात्मा स्नपनं परं विजयते श्रीकृष्णसङ्कीर्तनम्
नाम्नामकारि बहुधा निज सर्वशक्तिः अत्रापिता नियमिथा स्मरणेन कालः एतादृशी तव कृपा भगवन् ममापि दुर्दैवमिदृशं विहाजानि ननुग्रह.
Hare Krishna Karti Prabhu Tanda Pranam Jai Shri
Please
Prabhupada.
accept my humble obeisance with always Shri Prabhupada.
Trinadapi Sunichena Tarodapi Sahishna Amani Namanadena Kirtaniyah Sada Harihi.
न धनं न जनं न सुन्दरीं कवितां व जगदीश कामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवतात् भक्तिरहितुकी त्वयि.
Ainantanuja Kinkaram Paditam Mam Vijame Bhavan Mudau. Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stitha Dhuri Sadrisham Vijantayam.
नयनं कलदश्रुधारया वदनं गद्गदा हृदया गिरा पुलकर्निचितं वपुः कदा तव नाम गृहणे भविष्यति
युगायितं निमेषेण चक्षुषा प्रावृषायितां शून्यायितां जगत्सर्वं गोविन्द विरहेण मे.
Ashrishya va padamratam pinashtamam adarshanan marma hatam karotu va yatha tatha va vidadhatu lampato mat prananathastu sa eva na paraha.
Haribo. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious.
Oh my
Oh my
Lord,
Lord, your
okay. Karti Babu, you can continue.
okay, no issue. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them.
One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of the mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false predicts, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord consistently.
Haribo. Thank you.
Oh Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth.
O son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet.
Oh my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name?
Oh Govinda, feeling your separations, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence.
I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Krishna, Ashtakam ki Jai.
Right. Okay, then the 10 offenses. Who knows the first one?
To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives to propagating the holy name of the Lord.
To consider the names of the demigods, to consider the names of the demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal or independent of the name of the Lord Vishnu.
To disobey the orders of the spiritual master.
To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance to the Vedic version.
To consider the glories of chanting the Hare Krishna to be an imagination.
To give some interpretations to the holy name of the Lord.
7th offense, to commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name.
To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda.
9th offense is to instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
To not have complete faith in chanting of the holy name, to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must guard against these offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Chaka Guru Vaishnav Kripasana Bhavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
And the Gaudiya Vaishnava
Hari Bol.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Premanand.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hari Bol.